Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching episode 7 of Marvel's She-Hulk on Disney+, and yeah, this is another fun one. Still no Daredevil. Still, just get that right out in the open, still no Daredevil. I know that that's what a lot of people are like desperately waiting on, and for some people, that's the only reason they're even watching the show, which honestly I think at that point, just wait until you see on Twitter that he's in the episode. If that's like the only reason you're watching the show, I'd be like, just wait until he's in it. You know what I mean? Don't even bother watching every episode, I guess, right? Like, anyways. But I will say, I'm still really enjoying it. I'm still really enjoying this show. It's, the comedy works for me. It's lighthearted, it's ridiculous and silly. They don't overuse the meta moments. They only have like one this episode. And we are slowly still unraveling like what the big plot is, and it's kind of surprisingly slow, but at the same time they're keeping it episodic. Like every episode just for the most part can be like its own standalone episode, right? Which I think that is the main goal of this show, is to just be like, you can just put on a random episode and be like, all right, I want to watch this one again, and you don't have to have binged the whole show over. Right, so it works for me, which I know it's like a lot of people just want it to be the more, standard long form storytelling where it's like there's an overarching plot, but they're just not really focused on that. Obviously we get a development at the end of this episode like we did at the end of the last episode, but yeah, so let's just get right into it. So at the end of the last episode, Jennifer had met Josh at the wedding. And then it panned out to see that, oh, someone's watching them. It's that intelligentsia group that they found out about. And then they saw that they were preparing an even stronger needle so that they could get a sample of Jennifer's blood, right? Because that's what the Wrecking Crew was after. And then that's how that episode ended, right? And we still, we don't know what was up with the Wrecking Crew or who hired them or why they want the blood or... exactly what the plan is or the plot or who the villains are or who they're working for. We don't know any of that stuff. So we go into this episode, and basically what happens is that Jennifer has been hanging out with Josh. Everything seems to be going great. There's a montage. It seems like your standard rom-com, right? Everything's going fine. And then they end up getting together, right? They get together one night, and she wakes up entirely alone, right? In which, okay... fine, right? But she texts him, and she does not get a reply for 3 days. And they do, they kind of play into the comedy of her obsessively checking her phone the entire episode, and she never ever once gets a reply. And so, big mystery. What happened to Josh? Why, did he really just ghost her? Why would he do this? Because he seems like, really nice guy. Didn't seem fishy at all, actually. Seemed like, okay, maybe Jen finally gets a win once in her life, right? Because honestly, ever since she turned into She-Hulk, her life's just been more and more problems constantly, right? So it's like, all right, she needs a win. She deserves a win. But nope, she doesn't hear back from Josh at all. And then Blonsky, his little inhibitor thing says it malfunctioned. Now, the parole officer calls Jen saying, hey, I want a Hulk there with me in case, he's the Abomination. Obviously, I can't do anything if he just turned into the Abomination. So they go there and, remember Blonsky opened up this, what would you call it? Meditation self-help center type thing, right? Where, he had, I guess the money came from his 7... soulmates, is that what it was, right? So I guess that's where the money came from to open this self-help center. But anyway, so he's there and it's this crazy huge facility, and he's all zen now, right? Doing yoga and doing what do they call it, yurt, where it's like a big sweat lodge, really. Anyway, so he goes there, and basically it's oh, I zapped myself on an electric fence trying to rescue one of my chickens, because my chickens were stuck, right? And I'll say this, at no point do they reveal that was not true, but I'm still I can't take Blonsky at face value. I keep on waiting for a big turn, a big twist where it's like, actually no, I've been doing stuff in secret. But they never reveal that. Everything about Blonsky being like a nice person who's totally zen and at peace, it seems genuine. It seems like that really is, like, he's fine right now, you know? Which it's funny, you know, because like the way that Blonsky just kind of talks to Jennifer and tries to help her throughout her problems, and they end up, of course, going through this meeting because she's walking around the facility trying to look for a signal, and her phone doesn't have any signal until she goes into the group meeting, right, where they have everyone in the circle, you know. And this is where we meet a group of characters who are just ridiculous. So we have, well, first of all, the reason that Jen's stranded here is because we met two already. One was Man Bull, I think, and he looks like part man, part bull, and he says he was a science experiment, and they crashed into Jen's car because he was fighting this other guy. Oh man, who was it? It's a guy who insists he's not a matador, but he says he's a swashbuckler. That was what it was. I don't remember exactly what his like name was, you know, his like superhero name or whatever. But they're fighting, and they talk about how they got this epic rivalry, and they're like codependent on each other. It's just like this funny situation, right? Anyways, so she goes to the group meeting, and we meet a couple other characters here. We meet Porcupine, who they just say, oh, he's Porcupine, he is a porcupine, and he's just, as far as I can tell, he's just a guy in a suit, right? Like, he doesn't seem to have any abilities to speak of, right? And then we have, here's what they say. They have this other guy who thinks he's a vampire. That's the way Blonsky phrases it. He thinks he's a vampire. So, you know, of course, I'm assuming he's not one then, right? The funny thing is, like, they kind of play into that a little bit, which, of course, you know, you're like, oh, Blade, you know, like, maybe he really is a vampire, you know? And they, you know, they kind of make a couple jokes about, like, oh, let's take their blood, you know, like, because he thinks he's a vampire. But then they show him, like, in the daylight later, and he doesn't seem to, like, pretend to, like, avoid the daylight, or unless I missed it. But, yeah, I don't know, that's an interesting one there. But, anyways, basically they have this big group therapy chat, and Jennifer talks about how, like, you know, everyone wants She-Hulk, no one likes Jennifer, and of course we've seen this a couple times throughout the show, and she gets convinced to delete Josh's phone number, saying, like, you know, if he's not gonna invest time in Jennifer, then Jennifer doesn't need to be talking to Josh, right? Like, just kind of, like, help her get over this whole thing she's been obsessed with the whole episode. And then, one interesting development, though, and this was, you know, I kept on waiting for, like, a twist to happen, and then it didn't happen. Another member joins the group. He was, like, in the yurt the whole time. He comes out, and they do this funny moment where, like, it's this guy, and Jennifer's freaking out, and she's like, wait, did they do a previously on for this guy? And this is, like, the one big meta moment where she's like, okay, previously on this guy. And he was a member of the Wrecking Crew. And, you know, the way he says it, he's like, oh, yeah, sorry about all that. You know, I had a magic wrench. Me and my friends thought that we could, you know, take on a superhero. And that's really the only way they describe it. But remember, they were, you know, they all got back in the van, and they talked about having a boss who's going to be really angry. And they're like, oh, we didn't get her blood. The needle couldn't penetrate her skin. So it's like, he didn't reveal any of that, and he didn't talk about any of that. But at the same time, he seemed genuine. You know, like, I kept on waiting for there to be a twist, being like, oh, I contacted the rest of my group, or oh, he's gonna talk to the boss, saying, like, I know where Jennifer is, or something. But no, there was never at any point any twist with this guy. He seemed to genuinely be sorry, and then he's just there to work on himself at Blonsky's facility. You know, so, like, I don't, and, you know, of course there's going to be a big twist at the end of this episode, but it's like, this guy was not part of it at all, which is weird, again, because he was part of the Wrecking Crew, so it's like, is he, what was up with that? Like, surely he knows something, but he never said anything, you know? And I guess that was my big thing, is that, like, would why didn't Jennifer ask him, like, why'd you guys try to take my blood? You know, like, there's questions there that no one asked and no one answered. So I was kind of confused as to, like, okay, this guy's just reformed now, but he's got information, right? Okay. Anyways, but yeah, basically, you know, she makes a breakthrough, and then she calls the tow truck, and she kind of just leaves, and that's like it, right? Like, it's a lot of comedic moments, a lot of funny moments, and I really enjoyed this for what it was, you know. And then they do get a big reveal at the end. It turns out that 3 days earlier, Josh, after they had slept together, he woke up in the middle of the night, copied her phone onto his phone, right? So I guess he's, you know, going to be able to track her and know everything she does. And then he took a picture of her and then, like, sent a text. And it turns out that in the last episode we saw the Intelligentsia, the blog. It was like Hulk King, right? With like a Hulk face with a king on his, you know, a little emoji face, right? And it turns out that he is that user. He's Hulk King, right? And he took a picture of Jane while she's sleeping, and then he put a couple of emojis with like, oh, needle, thumbs up. Like, so I guess he's trying to say that he managed to get some of her blood. They don't show that, but I guess in the middle of the night he must have like gotten a blood sample from her. Maybe while she was in her Jennifer form. I don't know. But yeah, so I guess he's in on it. He's part of Intelligentsia, and you know, it doesn't seem like he's the one in charge, like he's the leader. But again, this kind of raises the question of like, okay, but didn't Intelligentsia hire the Wrecking Crew, or was the Wrecking Crew part of this group? And she was there with one of them the whole time, and there was never any questions being asked really about, you know, everything else that happened. So I don't know. I don't know where this is going, and you know, now we have the reveal that this whole Josh thing was just a big play to get her blood. Now here's the other thing, is that like the Intelligentsia site, it's essentially, you know, they treat it like 4chan basically, where it's like a bunch of angry dudes are just angry that She-Hulk exists, right? It doesn't seem like it's, you know, the site for a criminal mastermind supervillain, right? It doesn't really look that way. And yet, it is the site that they're using. So it's, you know, it's like this Josh character does not seem like the angry incel not Reddit user, but 4chan user, you know? So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't exactly know all the implications here. Like, was Wrecking Crew just a hired crew, and they were not actually part of this Intelligentsia thing? I don't know, you know, because this guy, the guy at the self-help group, didn't say anything. So yeah, Josh has some of her blood, and we still don't really know what the plot is. And again, Daredevil, I'm imagining he's going to be like the last episode possible, you know? Which I'm fine with, because again, I'm enjoying the show for what it is. And I guess my other thing is, like, I still see some people, like, weekly, like, just hating on this show weekly. But it's like, we're on episode 7. At this point, if you're still watching the show and you're still angry about the show, it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Stop watching? Just stop it. Why? Anyways, I kind of went on that whole rant last week, but it's like, it's ridiculous the way people are like, they feel like they're forced to watch a show when they're not enjoying it. It's weird. It's weird times. But yeah, She-Hulk episode 7. You know, it still feels like we're having our great episodic moments, a lot of comedic beats, but like, it is like they're teasing the main plot of this whole, you know, get She-Hulk's blood Intelligentsia thing, but we still know so very little. And how many more episodes do we have? 1 episode, 2 episodes left. So it does feel like at the very last minute we're gonna get a whole lot of plot at the very, very end, and it feels like that maybe should have been spread out a little bit. But you know what? I'm enjoying the show. Blonsky is hilarious, just seeing him like this, and I keep expecting a big twist, but there's not one. So I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, let me know how you feel about She-Hulk and the reveal of Josh being the guy taking her blood and all that. Yeah, and I'll see you guys next time.